Great. So our speaker today, the first speaker, I'm very happy that she decided to join us. It's an honor to have her here. She's Riitta Monto. Riitta she's a journalist and a media expert, and she's also a professional practice at the Faculties of Humanities at Turku universities. She has done it all, so this is just a short view of her career. She is the former editor-in-chief of Turun Sanomat that she covered until May of 2020. Before, she has the head of the cultural editorial office still in Turun Sanomat. She was a Turku TV program manager from 1996 to 2005. She covered different roles even in Radio Aura Waves. And while studying since 1980, she has also worked as a journalist for Yle. In 2020, Riitta started her own media and communication agency called Dicto. So she's represented the academic side of this event because Riitta, she's a lecturer of journalism at Turku University of Applied Sciences, and she is a lecturer about the role of journalists in the changing media. And she's also working as the Faculty of Humanities, as we saw at the beginning, of Turku universities, and she lectures teaching staff, research, and students about the possibility of a scientific communication. So I will now stop to share this presentation, and I will start with the presentation of Riitta. Riitta, are you here with us?
Yes.
Good. Let me share your presentation now. Voila. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting. It is very nice to be here today, networking with you. I tell something about my road and hope I can give some tips for you too. So my name is Riitta Monto, and I am not academic professor. I am a journalist, and as it calls, I'm professor of practice. I come direct from business and media world to university. I will show you how my dear colleague, graphic artist Ante Johansson at Turun Sanomat has described me in this cartoon. As you can see, I have iPad and newspaper in the other hand and microphone in the other hand, and also there is a poetry book because everyone knows that I love novels and poems. So this is a quite good presentation what I am, and as you can see, I'm quite busy doing my job. So I am not an academic professor, but I now work at a university. I have master of degree. I studied Finnish language, literature, and linguistics at the University of Turku. Not at all a typical subject for a journalist like journalism or political science. I have spent my whole career as radio and television and newspaper journalist. And because of that, I consider my profession is a privilege. Journalists get to delve into a variety of unfamiliar subject matter. At the same time, we build up a diverse network, and I can say that I really do know everyone here in Turku. Of course, not all, but almost everyone. My latest job was a decade-long stint at editor-in-chief for newspaper Turun Sanomat, as was told earlier. But I wanted to try something new. I was very inspired of my journalist job, but I wanted to do something new. So I left newspaper 2 years ago in the summer and set up my own company. This is media and communications company Dicto. Dicto is Latin and it means, for example, asking again and again, and that is what we journalists do. We ask always why. Together now with my partners, I develop communication service concepts. I also acquaint municipal policymakers with open communications. I sometimes moderate election debates and lead roundtable discussions, and I do love that. Sometimes I teach journalistic writing at the Turku University of Applied Sciences, and it is very nice to work with young journalists to come. So next picture shows from media where I have left. This is printing house Turun Sanomat in Turku. When I see this, I have very warm feelings. As a journalist, the world of universities is very familiar to me. I have created science shows and programs for radio and television and recruited researchers as newspaper columnists, commentators, specialist writers, etc. from university many times. When in early 2021, I took on the role of Professor of Practice at the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Turku, I gained a new perspective on the world of academics. Now I view the university from the inside, and the picture is a little bit different. The professorship is a part-time, 2-year position, which makes it ideal for me. The time horizon, 2 years, is long enough to develop things, and I also have the time to work in my own company, which is also ideal. And then we go to academics, next picture. This is Turku University, and it's also when I see the lines on the wall, Vapaan kansan lahja vapaalle tieteelle, it is very important for me because the line tells that people of Finland did collect money to build a university in Finland over 100 years ago. So it was very important. At the university, my expertise are naturally media, communications, culture, politics, and societal influence. As a professor of practice, I am on a mission for education and science. My goal is to boost the impact of research in the humanities and to develop the media skills of teaching staff, researchers, and students alike. I know media, I really do, and I know how journalists think. Through lectures and workshops, I help students and also university staff write fluently and show them how to appear natural in news interviews. And I can assure you it is not always easy. I think maybe some of you know it. Researchers in the humanities are rarely out there explaining why their research matters. They have broad and diverse knowledge, the ability to think critically, and the skills to solve problems. My role as a professor of practice is to ensure they have the courage and better skills to engage in public debates. It matters whose voice we hear in the media. As we all know, the horrific Russian war in Ukraine, we know the importance of media and whose voice we can hear in the media. Then we go to next dia and we go more inside university. This is a building called Arcanum. It's Faculty of Humanities, and because of the pandemic time, I have visited there only 2 times in a year. So I hope I will see students and researchers there soon. Currently, I am also looking into how much the opinions of humanities researchers are heard in the background of decision making. My study confirms my assumptions very little, and I am planning to write something about that, but maybe later when I get more information. Finnish working life needs an overhaul. This reform requires proven data and much more information and global thinking. When you know the language, you also have a broad understanding of the culture. What could be more important for an export company than an expert who is well versed in the language? And I also think a literature scholar might be an excellent choice for a company's head of HR. An international researcher transferring from the private sector to university brings with them a plethora of valuable expertise. When transferring to university, it is worth remembering the decision-making doesn't happen as quickly as it does in the private sector at its best, and that I have also seen and learned because I'm a quite quick decision maker myself. So we go on and next dia. I hope that people always comes up with new ideas when they go from university to business or vice versa. When my position at the university began, I discussed faculty's expectations and hopes with the dean, vice dean, and the leaders of the different units. The main thing, however, is to come up with my own ideas and offer something that the university didn't already have. I thought that was most important. Some tips I would like to give you how to act. Learn about your new environment, but don't get stuck in the old ways. Get to know the work community, stay in touch with people and discuss very actively with colleagues. Consider what new things you could bring to the table. Be interested and give feedback. And more, give feedback, because people love to get feedback. Active communication is important. When you tell others about your work, its meaning becomes clear to them. Don't assume that others are familiar with your expertise. You have to tell it time after time. This picture is from my Twitter feed from November. I was happy to meet researchers in the university, not only by Zoom or Teams. So it was very happy we could rehearse interviews also. And then we go my last dia about networking a little bit more. This picture is from my Twitter feed in the end of January, and as you can see, I don't see the students of history and archaeology, which I was teaching, but I saw a winter landscape from my home office window where I am sitting right now. Although we get in touch very good and we can carry on discussing about media skills and problems to solve with the students because we met on this lecture. Networking with international researchers is critical. Networking isn't just meeting at fancy events, as nice as they are. It is also about everyday communication, and I think it is almost above all important in everyday communication. Approach colleagues bravely, ask for advice, start yourself discussions, and offer to collaborate. If you don't operate in Finnish language, remember to be extra active. Although the most official information in the university is shared in English, you might miss a lot of informal but very vital information. International researchers working in Finland receive very little media attention. I must confess that, and I think that's a problem. Researchers need to make sure that the communications unit in the university adds their name and contact details to media specialist lists. The university's communication unit can be asked for help in Finnish language communications and many other problems. The communications unit can't be up to date on all current research, but they are very willing to help. And finally, be very independent, active, and open to collaboration. This is my short advice list for you, and the next there shows my contact figures. So thank you.
Thank you, Riitta. Thank you. Very inspiring. And I agree with you. International talents are not much seen in the news, but things are changing, luckily. So even compared to a few years ago, I can see a change in the Finnish media. So there is hope there.
Yes, and it is so important to be active because journalists don't know everything and everyone, but they are very happy to present new people, new researchers.
Yes, journalists need stories, and it's up to international talents to give them. That's very true. Thanks a lot. And now I think we can introduce Erika. And then if you have any question that you would like to ask Riitta, you can write them in the chat and we will take all the questions at the end. But let me briefly introduce Erika. I will share my presentation again. Voila. Let's go to Erika. I hope you can see it. I am happy to see that more and more people are joining this event. I'm sorry for Miss Riitta presentation, but now it's Erika Terranova. So Erika, she's Italian as me, and she's an academic that decided to actually switch her career and did the opposite path than Riitta. So she turned into a marketer, and she started to do marketing because she felt that she needed to keep learning new things in order to be happy. So she has worked for anything from B2B as to hypergrowth tech startup. But currently she is a growth marketing lead at Moomin, and I'm sure everybody have heard about Moomin in Finland. And there she works on the growth marketing, performance marketing, and e-commerce optimization. For her, work in such a beloved cultural powerhouse has been very fulfilling, and this allowed Erika to promote her value that she strongly believes in, and she helped her to make the world a kinder place. So thank you, Erika. I will now stop my screening and I leave the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Lucia, for the wonderful introduction, and also thank you so much to Riitta. It was really wonderful to see, you know, the process on the other side. So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about my journey and actually the mistakes I made. So hopefully you're not gonna make the same mistakes if you decide to follow the same path. So I was doing my PhD in, you know, sociology in Italy and history in Tampere, actually. And I was focusing on something that is extremely theoretical and not very practical, which was the Florence Renaissance and the myth of Lorenzo de' Medici. So something that has not much, you know, connection to business world. And when I finished my PhD, I realized I don't want to do this anymore. I actually would like to work in the private sector. Really don't want to have anything to do with academia. I was quite burned by the academic sector, let's put it this way. And then it's where I actually realized this is way harder than I thought. And if I go through all the mistakes that I've made, there were many. And I hope that you can relate to some of these. I see that a lot of you actually come from more technical universities, so a lot of these might not be as much of a surprise as for those of us who come from humanities. But at least I did not really think about planning for kind of other options besides academia where I was doing my studies. And that was my first mistake. So I was very much focused on like, oh yeah, I'm going to stay in academia, I'm going to study. And then when I was studying, I was not thinking about building other possibilities and networks and doing other things besides studying. So that was my first mistake. And then the second mistake is because I was, you know, I came from humanities and very strong academic focus. I did not know how to package my skills for the private sector, and I did not know how my skills could be applied to the private sector. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that I went through, and then what I think might be useful for a lot of you that come from much more technical backgrounds. So at least in humanities, there is a lot of transferable skills, but you really have to identify what is a good niche and what is a good place where you can actually transfer those skills. And that was a process that took me quite a while. And as well as like understanding how to package and to rewrite my CV and cover letter and applications and all of this from the point of view of breaking into a specific sector. So it took me a while to figure out that I would be good at marketing because of course there is a lot of writing and cultural understanding and sociological understanding that goes into doing marketing properly. And that was a niche that I would work in. So that first process took me a long time, and then figuring out how to rewrite my skills in order to make them palatable to industry. Because one thing that you will, at least in humanities, you will get a lot is, oh, you know, this is all, how is this relevant, right? How does this support you when you're trying to get a job in the private sector? And I've seen, for example, there are a few PhD in economics, and I know for a fact that I've worked with some people that were trying to get a job with a PhD in economics, and this was actually seen as not an advantage at all from a lot of companies because they are not interested in what you study. They're like, okay, yeah, so what have you grown, what have you built? That is way more relevant to them. And what helped me a lot was the one mistake that I didn't make is that while I was doing my PhD, I was actually also volunteering for a no-profit organization. And that's how I started doing things that were more related to marketing and event organizations and all this type of thing. And that's what helped me get a job because I had already something to show that like, I'm not just saying I can do these things, I can also show you that I've done something with it. So that would be very important suggestion that I would give everybody. Do not just focus on what you're studying, but really think about what field you want to break into if you're looking to break into the private sector and how to showcase your skills there. So put it in very blunt terms, from a company perspective, the fact that you've grown your own e-commerce, for example, your own small brand, or you have managed to make a successful YouTube channel is way more interesting than I have a PhD in economics or in sociology in my case. So this is just like one thing that is very important. And another one is when we talk about specifically about networking, there have been studies made that international students tend to network with other international students and not so much with Finnish people. And that this is a big disadvantage because it has been proved that international networks are less likely to help you find a job than Finnish networks. So it is important to network also with Finnish people and not only with international people. I think this is a classic thing, which is just not all of us have thought about it while we were studying. And then when you try to find a job through your networks, which is so important in Finland, you realize that your international network is not capable of helping you that much. Then there is another thing that I wanted to touch upon because we have so many people coming from technical fields. And of course, that means that you might have very desirable skills, but they are also quite niche. So my suggestion for those of you that come from technical background, it would be to start researching today, right now, while you're studying, which companies in Finland, if your plan is to stay in Finland or in Europe in general, are doing something that is interesting to you. And once you have found those companies, start following them, start interacting with them, connect with the people that work there on LinkedIn, show up to the webinars about their products, learn what they are doing, make yourself visible from the beginning. Because there are not going to be so many companies that work with your specific field. And if you want to use the skills that you acquired during your PhD, for example, in a private company, then it needs to be a company that works specifically with your topic. And I know that this is kind of a problem for a lot of PhD students that I've known and I've helped with their CVs, et cetera, that they are very much focusing only on academic networking and not so much on professional networking. And another one is that a lot of these companies doing kind of more interesting things that you might find a place in, they are startups. So being involved in the startup environment in Finland, which is thriving, is very important. There are lots of events, lots of organizations that are, impact-based networks. There is ESA working with like space startups. There is the new food sector. Seriously, whatever you're interested in, there is gonna be a startup that is already working with it right now. So it's very important to be in touch with them and realize what is happening, who are the key people, going to webinars, follow these people, start to create a rapport now. Because then when they're thinking about, in my network, there is somebody that is building this startup that deals with, something very specific, they have a list of people in mind and you want to be on that list if that's something that interests you. And another thing that I think it's also very important is to be willing to start from the bottom. And what I mean by that is that, of course, for some technical skills, you might get a position in a private company as, head of something, but it's very unlikely. Usually what happens is that you join at a lower level and then you build up. And for example, for marketing, which was not something I studied, I started with unpaid internships, and then I moved into paid internships, and then I moved into my first, specialist role and the manager and et cetera, et cetera. So I did not go in and be like, I have a PhD, give me head of something title. That is less likely, of course, to happen. And another thing is if your skill set is more related to what big companies in Finland are doing, I don't know, like Kone or Wärtsilä or et cetera, then there are very specific ways in which they screen candidates. So it's very important, like my first suggestion would be follow the people that are hiring managers in those companies, connect with them on LinkedIn, start building a relationship with them, and then show up at the webinars, and you will get so many interesting facts and very good tips on how to apply to those companies. So you really have to think not only what would you like to be and what you want to do academic-wise, but also, okay, if I was looking at companies, which type of companies would I want to work with and doing what, and then how to find those companies and interact with them. Another classic thing is that a lot of PhD students are not very active on LinkedIn. So, and when they are on LinkedIn, their profile is 100% research. And that is the fastest way for your CV to just go into the null pile. Because hiring managers are going to look at your CV, are going to look at your LinkedIn profile. And if they get the impression that you're only interested in research, they are not going to be as interested in you. So obviously, your research and your PhD is super important, and it should be in your LinkedIn. I'm not saying not to showcase it or not to talk about it, but it's also really about framing and framing what you want to do and how you want to do it and which other skills you have there and how you are posting on LinkedIn. Which type of content are you posting on LinkedIn? Are you only posting about your publications, or are you also interacting, with companies and people working for companies in your sector? So it's a very different approach. So you really have to think about also your content strategy on LinkedIn. And I would suggest, if you want to work in the private sector, start working on your LinkedIn today. It's a process. It takes a while to figure out what works and what doesn't. It takes a while to connect with the people that will be interesting to you. It takes a while to build your network. It takes a while to start posting on LinkedIn and start getting interest on the things that you post. This is also something that I did not know. I came to LinkedIn after I finished my PhD, and then it took me a while to build my network, start posting on LinkedIn, etc., etc. So if you are planning to work in Finland, I definitely recommend doing that. And then another important thing is just start volunteering, start applying to things. I understand that, like, of course, we are all very busy, but it's very important to find times for projects that are outside of your regular academic work, and it actually focusing on building your personal brand and building your reputation. So it's very good to not only talk at academic conferences, but actually get in touch with other communities that are talking about topics that are relevant to you and that are interesting to you. So, for example, even if I work full-time in marketing, I do a lot of work on international talent in Finland, and I speak at a lot of events like this one, but tons of others. And now I built enough of a reputation that people come to me and be like, "Hey, would you like to speak at this?" And that also means that a lot of people in these circles then know who I am, remember my name, know what I do. So then that might mean that in the future, like I already have a reputation and they might come to me. You also have to understand that lots of jobs in Finland are hidden jobs. They're not even posted anywhere. It's just somebody picking up the phone and calling a friend or a colleague and be like, "Do you know somebody that does this?" So you want to be a name in their list when they are calling somebody and be like, "Do you know somebody that does this?" And I wish that there was a little bit of a less hidden jobs, but it is a reality. It's a vast majority of jobs. So if you don't know people and people don't know you, it gets much harder. And another thing that I think it's important is just not to limit yourself. So obviously I'm a sociologist. I never studied marketing in my life, and now I'm a marketing expert. So one thing that a PhD should teach you is just how to learn new things. So maybe while you're studying, you can also pick up the basics of Python, or learn like machine learning, or things that are interesting to you and that you are developing as well. And that might be the route to a job in the future. Of course, we know the tech industry is booming. Data skills are much in request. So if you have the opportunity to learn even the basics of programming and basics of data science and these type of things, this will give you a huge leg up if you're looking for a job in private sector later on. But even if you're not interested in those things, there are still skills that you can learn, right? It might be that you become an expert on personal branding, or recruiting, or human resources, or whatever. There is so much out there that you can learn. So don't limit yourself too much to thinking, okay, I've studied these things, so this is what I need to be doing for the rest of my life. Absolutely not. You can really change your career, and we will likely all change our careers quite a few times during our lifetimes, as Riitta has shown, but as lots of examples show us. So don't be worried about that, and embrace the change, and embrace learning different things and seeing what works and what doesn't for you, and so on. But especially for the international people in this event, and international people in general, is extremely important to start building your networks today. And those are going to be a great asset and support system and also help you out. And there is so many things that are free, completely free of charge nowadays. Obviously, there are the events from Empower Wednesday, but also International Working Union of Finland, Nordic Inclusify does free events. The Shortcut has amazing programs that are for free if you want to get new skills in specific sectors. So really look outside of the kind of academic bubble and start to see what is out there in terms of other programs. Another thing that I see that I think it's very common, especially for PhDs in the technical field, is then to decide to start their own company. And that obviously, that is great, but it also, if you want to start your own startup, at some point, you need to learn a lot of things about, of course, funding and entrepreneurial skills and how to do a profit and loss spreadsheet and, lots of stuff like that. So if it is something that interests you, start hanging out with people in the startup community. There are lots of events and meetups that are for startup founders, where you can get to meet people that are doing really great things in climate technology or, food science. Like, there is so much out there. So, and if you get to know these people now, they are going to be a great support system when you're like, hey, I'm thinking maybe I have this idea that I want to develop. And then that's how maybe you're going to find somebody to work with you on that idea, or they are going to think of you when they are the product to build that is related to your direct expertise. So be as open as possible and as interconnected as possible with different networks. Do not limit yourself to academic work. Do not limit yourself to international circles. Connect with Finnish people. Connect with circles outside academia, and be very active and proactive today. And I also can tell you, like, a lot of people think like, oh, absolutely, I'm only going to do academia. That's, I was one of those people. But in reality, life might bring you to a different direction. And you might be there, like, in a couple of years' time, you're like, oh, no, I don't really want to be in academia anymore. Or you might just be there, like, there's just too much competition. We know that this is also a factor in a lot of people exiting academia, or just you need some stability because you want to start your own family. There are tons of reasons why. So I think it's very important not to limit yourself and to embrace change, to embrace this kind of scary unknown, and being a little bit uncomfortable and going outside of your comfort zone and approaching people and be like, hey, what should I do? Like, what would be something cool to do? And start following people on LinkedIn and start interacting with them and finding out where, events are happening and what kind of skills are in requests. You can always also manage, get in touch with recruiters, build a rapport, and then at some point be like, hey, would you be willing to tell me which kind of skills are you looking for this specific role, which seems interesting to me and seems in line with what I'm looking for. And they're always happy then to get in touch. And if you are in a technical field, you likely have already recruiters reaching out to you. But if you are not in a non-technical field, this might take more time and effort. But for everybody, I think in order to find your dream career, then it requires some work. And I'm very lucky to be working in my dream job. I cannot really imagine a better job than the one I currently have. It's just so wonderful working with Moomins and having a lot of freedom and doing what I want. But this also comes as the result of years invested into my skills and growing my network, growing my reputation, becoming confident in what I can do, learning new things, etc., etc. So yeah, I think it's really great to look at this from this perspective as well. So go out and network and meet people. It's gonna be very good for you.
Thank you, Erika. Thanks a lot for a lot of tips. And I hope everybody can remember them. But I think if we can listen to your presentation and Riitta, I think the point in common is to get visible and communicate what actually you are doing. Because a lot of time we assume that people know what we do and how we do it, but it's not the case. Is it, Riitta? Is it your experience as well?
Yes, that really is exactly like that. You have to be active. You have to connect with other people, you have to write. It's good to be active in social media. For example, journalists do follow Twitter feed very much because we can find their interesting opinions, and also many specialists for an interview. So you have to tell what you can, because we don't know it otherwise.
Of course. And I think that Erika said something interesting about maybe our audience today can relate about being in the academic bubble. So that a lot of internationals may come to Finland for a specific position in the academic, but then, as Erika said yourself, but then they found out after that they may change path, but they haven't really built their network while they were working in the academia. And at the same time, people that are interested in entering the academia, they need to have the knowledge of somebody there that recognizes expertise. So it's go both ways. You always need to go out from your comfort zone of the yard of people that you know and you interact daily to get yourself visible and get noticed and be the expert in your own field. So Erika, how did you become an expert in your own field? Because you scaled the ladder, like you said that you start from unpaid internship till now you are in charge of the marketing of Moomin. So
the thing is, one good thing usually for PhDs is that at least I, and I think a lot of you, we are excited by learning and we want to learn new things. And at least I get bored very fast. So I need to constantly learn new things. And that's why marketing was perfect for me, because you can never run out of things. And whenever you have mastered something, a change comes in and everything is completely different and you have to start from scratch. So that curiosity and intellectual curiosity, which is a great asset for academia, but also for the private sector. So that has been the most important thing, like being willing to constantly push yourself outside of your comfort zone and learn new things. And to give you an example, when I started, obviously I was more comfortable with things like content and writing and things like that. And I kind of built those skills. And then I was, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? So currently I do performance marketing and analytics, which was kind of outside of my comfort zone because I'm like, oh, numbers and data and whatever. But then I was like, oh, but actually this is good to learn. And the more I do it, the more I learn it. And then it's always thinking about the next skill. So now that I feel I mastered quite a lot of marketing, I'm actually going more into product. So I'm learning more about product-related business and agile methodology and a lot of things like this. And I think the learning should never stop. And this is true whether you are in academia or in the private sector. So be curious and never stop learning. And then I think you can go anywhere you want.
Thank you, Erika. And Riitta, do you have any suggestion for international talents that are interested in entering their academia? Because you said at the beginning that you know everybody in Turku. You've been, and everybody knows you, of course. But what suggestion would you give to somebody that arrives here and doesn't know anybody? Because as international talents, usually, especially women, we move to Finland because they follow the partner or the family reason. So which suggestion would you give to somebody? Sorry, my little kid is screaming in background. So which suggestion would you give to somebody that comes here and have no connection?
I would like to encourage to make a phone call and ask about things you are interested in, and let people get to know you. It is important, for example, in LinkedIn to get connections, but also direct connections. And hobbies, if you have some interesting hobby, you might there meet some people and you have a connection. It is a little bit different, but when I did teach the young journalists at University of Applied Sciences, I sent them to press conferences. and it was press conference about what's happening in theater or ice hockey field or something about City Council of Turku. And when they were there, I said, now you have to understand that you are connected. You have met people there. You have names and connections. It is not something special. It's everyday life. You meet someone and you have heard and met someone, so you can next time call and say, we met there. Can you tell me something? And if you want to work at university, for example, in Turku, which is a great city, very nice, a very nice university too, you have to find out what is happening in university and follow the news from the university. And maybe if there are some people you would like to meet, so you just phone or write an email and tell about you. There might be something which is not seen on the open jobs market, but there might be something that is useful to you. So I encourage people, and this is quite funny because we Finnish people are not very famous about being so brave. We are more shy. But as a journalist, you have to always ask and ask and ask. So if you can do the same and for something you are interested in, and if you want to work, so just I want to encourage, be active.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I have to say, at least my experience as a foreigner, that you are right, that Finnish might be not so willing to talk, but they're always willing to help. And whenever you write an email or you send a request for any tips, I always have really positive feedbacks. And Erika, maybe you can relate because we come from the same background. Like if you send an email to an Italian university, you will never have an answer ever, not even your students or maybe working there, but it's not the case from Finnish university or in general organizations. So Finnish people are really there to help. So don't be afraid that they might look like shy or reserved, because if you ask for help and they are willing to give you. So this is something that I've noticed myself. But I think that now we have few minutes to 5, and we can maybe start to introduce the second part of this event. Well, actually, you can really connect with Erika and Riitta and the other international talents here. But I will love if Anna could introduce Digimesh. I will share my slides once again. Seems like the game today. Let me see.
Yes, thank you, Lucia, and thank you, Riitta and Erika, for the interesting and insightful presentations. Yes, so
I just stopped the recording. Need to record.